Mintier. Welcome to tonight. We have the fortunate luxury tonight of having Somtow Sutrakun. Somtow, you have been well known as an author and a composer and a conductor, but most people in Thailand don't realize the number of books that you've written.
That's very true. And oh, by the way, thanks for...
I have two of them here, by the way.
Thanks for dragging me back here to the show. It's great to, to be able to...
These are the two books.
These are two of my books, yes.
Jasmine Nights is a novel that you write by the pen name of S.P. Somtow.
Right.
You don't use your normal name when you write.
You know, I did it first. My first 10 books or so, which were science fiction books, came out under my entire name. And then there came a time when I was writing my novel Vampire Junction, which was one of the first horror novels of the MTV years, and my publisher said, I think this book could appeal to a wider audience than the rather specialized audience that you've been appealing to in the past. So we want you to change your name to something completely innocuous. And the first few names they suggested were in the John Smith sort of
I'd be happy.
And I said, as a Thai, I feel very the names have magical significance for Thais. You can't just randomly change your name. You have to go to an astrologer, and the letters have to be carefully weighed, and so I can't just change my name to make more money. So, they said, okay, you change your name and we'll make you a star. So I did, and they didn't. But we'll get to that later. And that's how S.P. Somtow was born. And the P is completely meaningless.
Writing science fiction and horror books.
Yes.
Most of them, surprisingly, haven't been translated into Thai and published here.
Very few. Because
most Thais like that genre of science fiction and horror. You go to the Thai movies, and it seems like every other movie is a horror movie.
That's extremely true. I mean, and it is a little bit surprising, I think. And I think that the science fiction that I started writing was in this very complex Baroque sort of mode, with set in very alien societies with very bizarre sort of anthropology and extremely weird alien names and invented languages, and maybe it was actually quite hard to translate because it was so dependent on being in English. But then I started writing books that I think are easier to translate. In fact, horror is easier to translate than science fiction anyway, because alien worlds can be quite a treat, quite a specialized thing. But horror, everybody is scared sometimes, and everybody can relate to being stranded somewhere or being worried about a monster under their bed or something. Everybody all over the world has had those fears. So,
or being in Jamaica Beach, New York at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah, everybody is afraid. I mean, that's one thing the human race has in common. So, yeah, so my publisher in that sense was right, that I should get a very identifiable short name, and so I did that. And
what about making them into screenplays? Have you thought about taking your books and bringing them to Thailand for a Thai audience to see in the theater?
Yes and no. I mean, the screenplay thing, some of my novels, like Vampire Junction, have been under option by studios for years. And in that particular case, I think that they keep not figuring out how they're going to film it.
But holding the option.
Yeah. I have, when I was in LA, I worked for Roger Corman briefly, and I wrote the screenplay for a rather silly movie called The Burial of the Rats. That's been available in Thailand. Although I think most people don't realize that I wrote it.
That's a good thing.
Perhaps so. It's one of my more hilarious adventures in film. But I've had some rather odd experiences with the film industry here in Thailand, where I've been wooed to sort of do something and then it sort of fizzled out. So the short answer is that, yeah, I'm working on it, and if I can find a way to make it work, it'll happen just like that.
So when we get down to the theater next month, we may be able to see Vampire Junction, once the option expires in America, produced by a Thai company in Thai for a Thai audience. So we'll be back on tonight to talk more about horror films in just a moment.
ไม่เคยหยุดนิ่งมาร่วมโฟกัสกับทุกข้อมูลเจาะลึกทุกเรื่องราวกลยุทธ์การตลาดจับกระแสความเป็นไปในภาพรวมของเศรษฐกิจที่ควรรู้ครบถ้วนได้มากกว่าในวงการอสังหาริมทรัพย์วิ่งไปให้เร็วกับเทคโนโลยีหลายประเด็นที่อยู่ในความสนใจของคุณติดตามได้ใน Business Focus ทุกวันเวลา 14 นาฬิกา
รายการข่าวแบบเข้มข้นที่นำเสนอทั้งข่าวสารและการวิเคราะห์เจาะลึกรวมถึงการนำเสนอแง่มุมความคิดในประเด็นต่างๆทั้งทางการเมืองเศรษฐกิจและสังคมที่ช่วยให้ทันเหตุการณ์แบบวันต่อวัน The News Hour with Jim Lair ทุกวันอังคารถึงวันเสาร์เวลา 15:30 นาที
Hello, I'm Tom Mintier. We were, during the break, talking about horror films, and the last film I remember being scared was Psycho.
Oh, and that film was a very important formative experience. I mean, you see, I owe my love of horror to my mother, you know, as did Norman Bates. But my mom loved horror films, but she didn't want to go to them alone, so she would take me as a child to see them. And we saw Psycho many times. And you see, the thing is that my mother didn't actually want to look at the scary bit, so she would cover her eyes during the scary bit. So, in fact, it would she would only peek very slightly, and therefore it would take several viewings.
You were watching full.
It would take several viewings of a film before she actually saw the whole film. So naturally, one of my jobs, was to actually see what was in the film, so I could explain to her afterwards what she had missed. And one of the great joys of actually ending up doing some horror novels was to be able to meet some of the great idols of my childhood. For example, Robert Bloch wrote the original book Psycho, and when I became a writer, to my amazement, he gave me a blurb for one of my horror novels, and I got to meet him, and I met many of my other childhood idols as well.
The people who go to the opera and see you on stage conducting have no knowledge of your writing career.
That's very true. That's very true. And the question is, should they or not? I mean, you know, I mean, there are probably. I mean, the people who, you see, to me, composing music and writing words comes from a very similar place in my mind. So I don't really find a terrible difference between doing one or the other. But maybe for the audience it is different.
What about when you wake up? I talk to a lot of writers, when they wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, that's the time they decide to write. It's when they are awakened in the middle of the night from sleep that they're most creative.
Well, Tom, to tell you the truth, I've had a slightly different problem from that. You see, for most of my life, I never started writing until midnight, because the whole day would be spent sort of putting things off and worrying about other little things. And then at midnight, everybody else in the house would be completely asleep. And finally, this calm would settle, and I'd finally be able to actually sit down and start writing. And it was like another world could be created out of this sort of completely still world. So my whole life, I lived on this schedule where I didn't go to sleep until dawn, and
like a vampire.
Yeah, like a vampire. And in fact, I would actually go to sleep after making breakfast so that my kid would go to school and like that. And then I would wake up at the end of school. So in fact, it was a perfect existence, you know. And then when I moved back to Thailand, suddenly the nightmare began, because without changing the 12 to 6 writing schedule, I was also now administering an opera company which worked from 9 to 5. And after, about 6 months ago, I had a sudden sort of...
Midnight to 6 and then 9 to 5. When did you sleep?
Well, that was the problem.
You weren't.
I wasn't. And then suddenly, one day I just sort of I just keeled over. And so I went to the doctor and he said, it's perfectly simple. Just add up the sleeping hours. You just have forgotten to sleep for the last... You don't even remember how to sleep. And then after that, I've been trying to regulate myself better and to make my life fall more into the sort of a regular sleeping pattern. And
most writers have difficulty saying, I need to sit down at midnight and write till 6 in the morning. They write when they feel like it. Yeah. Are you the same way?
Well, but luckily I managed to feel like it at exactly that time. I mean, that's the thing. Because you can't write almost 50 books without some sense of self-discipline. I didn't just write whenever I felt like it. I did actually. But when I came back to Thailand about 6 or 7 years ago, I did have a very long writer's block, which only just broke very recently.
So you're writing again?
Yeah. Which is very exciting, actually.
I talked about not being able to schedule your time. Composers are the same way. When they write music, there are a lot of things that they'll crumble up and throw on the floor and start over again.
Yes.
How many books have you started and not finished?
Many. There's quite a lot of them lying around, luckily or unluckily, thanks to a major hard drive crash I had recently, some of them are gone forever.
But are there projects that you pick up and start again?
But on a number of occasions, I started a book or a story, and then years later, I finished it, and it was as though no time had passed. Because, I think that 90% of any creative act happens not when you're sitting at the computer or actually writing something, but it happens somewhere else, and it's not going to actually come out onto the page until it's ready, and you just have to let it happen. So, there have been times when I thought that I had crumpled it up and thrown it away, but it was really just percolating.
So you take that project and you bring it back out and pick up where you left off, if you will.
Yeah, but in other cases, I've been writing a book with a sort of desperate speed because I know that if I let one thread of it go, it'll never come back. That's also happened to me. So.
Okay, when we come back on tonight, we'll talk about the difference between writing fiction and writing for an opera. We'll be back on tonight in just a moment. Stay with us.
พบกับอันดับภาพยนตร์ทำเงินยอดฮิตของฮอลลีวูด Box Office Update ภาพยนตร์ที่เข้าใหม่และภาพยนตร์ที่จ่อคิวฮิตในแต่ละสัปดาห์ในรายการ Box Office America ทุกวันอาทิตย์เวลา 13:30 น.
In the face of adversity, just how strong can the human spirit be? Inspirational stories of hope, courage and survival. Survivor's Guide.
Meet the most interesting people in the Asia-Pacific region and see how they really live.
Nothing to hide.
What actually motivates you?
I couldn't even think because of the pressures, the G-forces, whatever it is.
You get used to it. Join me, Michael Peshard, for Peshard's People, here on BBC World.
What does democracy really mean? Is it important? What challenges does it face? In a special season of programs, BBC World asks, why democracy? This October on BBC World.
You can email us electronically at tonight@truevisionstv.com, tonight@truevisionstv.com. Or if you'd like to send us a regular letter, you can send it to Tonight with Tom Mintier, News 24, and the address is Tipco Tower 118/1, Rama 6 Road. That's in Bangkok 10400 is the zip, of course, here in Thailand. Now, the piano concerto that you wrote for the Queen, you said it was quite nice.
Her Majesty the Queen is very fond of romantic music and loves the piano, and yet nobody had actually created that kind of piece and it was a birthday present for the Queen, and it was also a wonderful opportunity to get the Queen and Her Royal Highness Princess Galiani. They both came to the presentation of this concerto, and a wonderful pianist from Belgrade came, and he was the pianist, and it was just a wonderful way to do something.
There's no shortage of arts in this country.
Right.
You can go to the ballet, you can go to the
indeed.
opera, you can go to the symphony. Any night, there is a performance somewhere.
Yes.
Now, I have friends who go to the National Theater and see Thai traditional plays and music. There doesn't seem to be the same kind of stage as there is for operatic performance.
Yes. I'm looking into the idea of having an opera house here. Many people have announced that they're making an opera house, but an opera house is a very specialized thing, and because we don't use microphones, so acoustically it has to be very, very, very perfect.
Perfect.
Now, however, if a building can be used for opera, you can do anything. You can do symphonies, plays. You can do anything because acoustically it's perfect. So naturally, such a building could be a major new center for.
So it could be multi-purpose. It could have the symphony one night and the opera the next.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe not seat as many people as a cultural center.
Absolutely. The cultural center, it's a little large for most operas, although for huge performances it's ideal, of course. And if we had an opera house that seated about 800 to 1,200 people, we could probably fill it all the time and have more frequent performances.
As I said, there's no shortage of things to perform here and audiences to perform it from.
Oh, yeah. And people here are finally beginning to actually love the opera. When I first came here, people would always say, oh, we can't go, it's too difficult to listen to, and so on and so forth. And now, we're really, because I do a demographic study of who comes to the opera, each time we perform. And the audience that's really growing is the audience of young, middle-class people who have never seen this kind of thing before, and who are coming because they find it entertaining.
One of the most recent opera's performances is Madame Butterfly.
Yes.
And you brought me a copy here in Italian.
Yes.
The original language of the production itself.
Yes.
Finding a DVD of Madame Butterfly on the streets of Bangkok may be difficult.
Maybe so. But here it is for you.
But you have, you brought 4 different operas.
These are our own productions, yes.
And unlike the books that are not available in Thailand, the operas are.
Oh, yes, you can get these. And although mostly not at the major DVD shops, but there are some that specialize in classical music. You can get them. And also you can get them at all our performances. Somebody will be selling them. And yes, you can get them on Amazon.com. And
even at Amazon.com?
Yeah, they have our operas. They do have our operas, yes.
We talked earlier about censorship and YouTube. A lot of your clips are on YouTube.
Yes, I was a little distressed about the YouTube thing because if you go to our YouTube channel, the Bangkok Opera's YouTube channel, you'll see that 750,000 people have visited our Bangkok Opera's YouTube channel, which does nothing but good for this country by putting out there the fact that Thailand has a really sophisticated opera that is certainly quite up to modern standards and that people all over the world are interested in and so on. And so I felt that that it was in a way was sort of taking away something that could be very useful for the country to because it suddenly meant that while of course everybody overseas could still see the clips, the people in Thailand couldn't.
Now they can. YouTube is unblocked. The Bangkok Opera is once again viewable. I just watched a clip of Madame Butterfly yesterday on YouTube.
Right.
So it's a very useful resource. So we'll be back again on tonight, another time with another interesting guest and have an opportunity to talk about an interesting subject. So stay with us and join us again.